Evening, everybody. Welcome to the Village of Bartlett first half session of the Committee of the Whole meeting for October 3rd, 2023. I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Trustee DEYNE?
Here.
Gansey?
Here.
GUNSTEEN?
Here.
Hopkins?
Here.
LAPORTE? Here. Sawonsky?
Here.
President Wallace?
Here. I believe we are going to turn it over to our friends from A5 Branding for a presentation. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll just say a few quick words.
Yep.
This is an item that came to be in your strategic plan that was most recently voted on under short-term complex. These folks were sent an RFP along with several other companies. Then they went to the EDC for vetting, and then they came back to Committee of the Whole. They're back here to the board, and this is really a campaign that's going to last several years, and we've signed a one-year contract with them. And with that being said, I'll kick it over to Mr. Harris.
All right.
Good evening. Good to see you all again. I'm joined here by my colleague, Matt Robbie. If he sits silently, it's because he's taking notes tonight, but might join me in the conversation. And that's really what we want to have tonight with you all, is a conversation over the next hour, and we'll wrap it up on time because somebody's going to make sure I got the signal. I'm looking, oh, I see the clock. Good. And what we want to do is get your thoughts on what makes Bartlett different and special. You know, why you live here, why you might work here. And as we ask you, we're also asking members of the EDC, which we did a couple of weeks ago, and asking the community. And we're doing that in a variety of ways. We're going out to community events. We're doing it through the village's communication channels, a variety of those. And we're also going out to through other governmental bodies or other entities, so whether the Chamber of Commerce or maybe the Park District, et cetera, so we can engage the community and find out what's good and what's going to be even better in Bartlett. And the idea ultimately is to create a campaign that is clear, concise, consistent, compelling, and helps to differentiate Bartlett from other communities. And that will help with resident retention and attraction. It'll help with economic development, also economic development for attraction and retention, and also building a stronger sense of community. And so we just want to ask you guys some questions and get your thoughts out here. We might have some follow-up conversations on specific topics if it's necessary or warranted, or you'd like to have a one-on-one conversation with us. So with that, ready? Any questions before we go? All right, the first one is a simple one. Why do you love Bartlett? What makes Bartlett different or special?
I'll go. When I decided to move here, one of the things I noticed were all of the paths outside and the different open space, because I'm from a small town and I lived in Elmhurst, and it was nice middle for me. But then there was also where I bought my house, connectivity to the downtown area, so I was able to walk instead of having to drive 15 minutes to get somewhere. So that was really appealing to me. I liked that there was Park District, that there's libraries, kind of just everything that I needed right in the downtown area. And I could tell, even though I moved here, I was somewhat young, I liked the sense of community, and it felt like I could become involved in it.
Okay. When you say sense of community, what does that mean to you?
I felt like there were visibility of different organizations, and I knew if I desired, which I did right away, that I wanted to be involved, that there'd be something I could be connected to. Okay.
Can you take that just a little bit deeper, and then we'll jump over to, so when you say connected to community and organizations, such as?
I love events, so I knew I could get connected to people that could help plan events for the community. Okay. I could tell, like, just coming into town and the Chamber, Rotary, Lions, there were set groups of people that wanted to plan for their communities.
So you saw and sensed that sense of community, and then you were able to find it and experience it over the last, how long have you been here now?
14 years.
So you're new?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
I always call it, I say New Hampshire's my hometown, but Bartlett's my chosen town.
Great. Your chosen town. Okay, good. All right, who wants to go next? What makes Bartlett different, special?
I can go next. I've lived here my whole life. I didn't choose it until I was old enough to buy a house and actually chose to stay here. I would second, Stephanie Ganzi, community. The community of 41,000 and growing, over the last 40-plus years of my life, I can go into any restaurant, any store in Bartlett, and you're bound to see somebody you know, and that has that same feeling from the time I was younger till even today. As time has gone on, the needs of Bartlett have grown, so we have branched out and brought more restaurants and stores in town, but throughout that whole process, we haven't lost that small-town community feeling. We haven't been inundated with big box stores and, you know, big corporate takeover. We have a small-town downtown area. When I decided to run for trustee, the one thing that I wanted to ensure is that my kids would be proud to live in Bartlett as we were to stay here. So, in keeping that small-town community feeling. Second to that, I will also second the bike path and the way the Park District interacts and creates a whole, it encompasses everything about Bartlett into one. So, it's very simple. It's community and keeping the community feeling like they're all one.
Okay. As we move along, I might ask you to come back to, both of you, to maybe a story of what that means. So if you could think about an instance where literally, and it could have happened last Saturday morning when you went out of the house, or it could have happened years ago, but what that sense of community, a story that connects us. So others, why do you love Bartlett?
I'll do family.
Family?
I was raised here. My wife was raised here. Her mom was raised here. So we've got multi-generations, and siblings chose to stay here, to raise their families here. So we've got a sense of family. On my street, we have families, all families on our street for 25 years, and we all share common values. So whether it's religious, athletic, beer and a cigar and a pizza, it's all the same. You know, it's shared values. I didn't have to worry about my kids when they were at their house because they raised their kids the way I raised my kids. If they needed to yell at my kids and vice versa, it was done. It didn't have to be done, but the permission was there if it was needed. And one of the reasons that I chose to be a board member was so that I can make sure, to the best that we can, that those values that I was able to grow up with, we can hopefully offer those in the future to community members that are here or that will choose to live here. In a small town, but it's not just me, it's a lot of the people that live here are family, you know, and they've got multi-generations. And to what Dan said, you know, there's something to be said to go into a grocery store and knowing people, or going to 120 Live and knowing people, you know, or having a village administrator that lived in the apartment above me 35 years ago. You know, there's something to that, you know, and then I'm afraid if I moved away to a golf course community in Florida that I'd have to start all over again. I'd be adept to do it. I could do it, but my home is here.
Thank you. Next.
Well, I can give you a little story. My computer's not working.
Chris.
Yeah, I know it. He's not here. We moved to Bartlett in 1976. So we've been around, you know, and you talk about being born and raised in Bartlett. Adam, you know, I was living here before you were born, most likely. Same thing, you know, with some of you. But the point is that when we left the city because there was it was changing. I want to be very careful about what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And, so we came out here to Bartlett. Now, my wife looked, she looked at, Streamwood, she looked in, Carroll Stream, she looked in, Hoffman Estates, all the surrounding communities, all right? And we're in the city, and, I was reading the paper, and I kept seeing Bartlett, 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 you know, in homes for sale, you know. So I told her, I said, let's take a ride out to Bartlett. So we drove out to Bartlett, and Schultz's Hardware was here, and I needed to get something that, for the house in the city, and I don't specifically remember what it was, but I went into Schultz's Hardware, and they had it, and I bought it, and as I'm checking out, they had some nails on the counter, and I said, well, what are those nails? And he said, those are horseshoe nails. So I walked out to the car and told my wife, I said, we're buying a home in Bartlett. So that's how we got to Bartlett. And once we got to Bartlett, I noticed that, you know, the Lions Club wasn't around, but we didn't get involved with the Lions Club because we were younger, and they had a group called the JCs. And we were fortunate enough to get involved with the JCs. And it was like every single weekend we had a project, we were doing something in the community. And it was such a close-knit bond of people. It was unbelievable. We talked to one another in the evening, share stories and whatnot, but it seemed like every weekend we were doing something. And it's just grown since then. My kids all went to school here in the area, and well, my son still lives with us. My daughter's moved on now, but the point is, that's what brought us to Bartlett, and the feeling that we had when we joined the organizations. You take a look at the organizations they have now, and I'm sure I'm going to miss some, but we have the Lions Club, we have the Rotary, which I'm a member of. We have the Bartlett Historical Society. We have Bartlett Arts. There's, you know, just a number of different organizations that one can get involved in. And we're still involved in that. And that's something I couldn't do. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing anywhere else except the friendships that I've made in this village. And I hope those continue, so.
Mm-hmm. So you're still involved in Lions, Rotary, those types of things?
Say again?
You're still involved in those types of things, Lions, Rotary?
Well, my son, we have a rule in our house, okay? My son is Lions, and I'm Rotary, okay? And yes, we will work together, but we kind of keep our distance in those two groups.
So there's a family rivalry between the two organizations?
Sorry?
There's a family rivalry.
I guess you could say that, right.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
Let's go next.
it leaves me then, right? I've been here for 35, 36 years. My daughter went to school here from kindergarten through high school. She has since moved on also. What I like about Bartlett is it seems to have grown with us, with me, I guess. I mean, there was a time when the town center there was nothing there.
Gas station.
Yeah, you had
Tom's.
Tom's gas station, right? There was, I mean, you had the Bartlett tap, and that was about it. And it kind of grows as you go along. It is nice to walk into, I feel like I'm walking into Cheers sometimes when I walk into a place, and people go, Renee, and I go, where's Norm? But it's also, you can also be very private here, too.
Be very...
Private.
Yeah, okay.
You can choose to take part in the activities in town, but there are other places to go, like if you're, depending on where you live, you can just have a nice quiet place and choose to have some solitude if you want to, and people respect that. People seem to respect either way, whether you want to be social or you want to be private at any given time.
Where'd you live before? I know it's been 36 years, but from where did you come?
Where did I come from before here?
Oklahoma.
I moved here from Elgin, but before that, I lived in Oklahoma. That's where I grew up.
Okay, all right. Okay, so but you were and what was it that said Bartlett? We're coming to Bartlett.
We lived in Elgin, and we were looking at a rental home here that we could rent out. And so we bought it and rented it out. And then when our daughter was born, we moved here.
Okay.
Because it was just flat up a nicer town, a better area.
And is your family still here too in
I'm
Bartlett?
the only one here.
Okay, all right.
Oh, my husband.
Right.
But I'm the only one here, yeah.
One thing I wanted to add, you know, and I forgot about this, when we moved here in '76, there were like 4,500 people, and you could walk in downtown area and just about know everyone. Now we're over 40,000. And the other shining thing that our village has to offer is we have a golf course right down the street, 18-hole golf course, right? One of the best golf courses, public golf courses in the area. And Park District also has a 9-hole course, Apple Orchard, and the Park District also has Villa Olivia. So it's an integral part of my life to be close to a golf course.
Right. Okay, yeah.
One thing I think is kind of interesting when you're in our downtown area, you've got people in all different ages. 120 Live has got people who are clearly just 21 years old, and people with their families, like small children, and then you've got older people in there too. And everybody's having a pretty good time. And the same thing with Moore, I believe, and JC's. You don't feel excluded, I guess, is a good way to say it.
Trustee Hopkins?
I would have to echo what Joe said about family. My family's been here since the 1920s. I chose to stay here. My parents chose to stay here. Also, it just feels like a small town, but we have 43,000 residents. Same thing like what everyone else said. You know, you go into a grocery store or a bar or a restaurant and people know you. You feel safe here. We were just talking about that while we were eating pizza. No one locked their doors, you know, when we were younger. I know people do it now, but we still feel safe. It's one of the safest communities, you know. I think not even in the state of Illinois, but across the United States. So, so yeah, you feel safe here, family.
So you feel safe, and the statistics bear that out as well. Okay, right. Mayor?
Yeah, I think I would just concur with everything that everybody said. When we were strategic planning 20 years ago for the Chamber of Commerce, we tried to put a finger on what you're asking for, and nobody can really put a finger on what it takes to maintain a small town feel in a fairly large town, but we've actually accomplished that in Bartlett. So I'm not exact. I know that a lot of it was some heavy lifting with the board, the decisions that were made on the board. A huge amount of it, you don't move to a town unless you feel safe in that town. So a few trustees have mentioned the safety portion, which is our police department is top notch. They're on top of everything in the town, and that's a feather in the administrator's cap, who makes sure that there's enough officers on the streets and things are working well. But when it comes to the overall fabric feel of the town, like they said, there's so many organizations that have events, and people know about those events. And, you know, we always are constantly in the top percentage of the National Night Out with our police department. There's 2,000 or 3,000 people at the park every year. The Merry and Bright that I just saw the sign for now, that used to be, what guys, 100 people maybe around a Christmas tree, and we'd flip a little switch, and within a couple of 3 years, the board said, hey, let's pump this thing up. And staff did a fabulous job of doing that. Now we've got 1,500 people down there. So those kind of events, I believe what happens is you have friends of people that are Bartlett residents come and visit those events, and they're like, yeah, this town is a fun town. It's someplace I can see there's a lot of family-oriented events. So it's a combination of all of those things, of the Lions and the Rotary and the Chamber of Commerce and the Historical Society and the Arts in Bartlett and the youth football programs that we have. There's just the combination of all of those together, I feel like, is the right recipe, and not having a huge thoroughfares through your downtown. That's very essential. You know, our downtown is walkable. you know? I love that. We're about 1.5 miles from downtown, and I love that me and my wife can walk or ride our bikes down and just go out to restaurants or whatever on foot or on our bike, because there's not any major traffic running through there.
Okay. Did we miss anybody?
Touching on what he said, though, like our bike path network, I mean, you can get to so many places, and you
It's
can,
improving.
yeah, you can get out to the Fox River and get on that trail. You can go out on the Great Western Trail. I mean, it has a lot to offer when it comes to biking and running and things of that nature.
Yeah. 30 years ago when I first moved here, I think one of the only places that we would walk to would be Bratz. And that was really the only place, either that or we'd go downtown to, now you can have Chinese, you can have Japanese, you can have Mexican, you can have Italian, you can have every kind of food you can imagine right downtown.
Ice cream.
Ice cream, yes, that's very popular, and some of the best coffee around, so.
I also want to add to the conversation I had earlier. You said you wanted to circle back as something that, you know, triggered that why is it a community, or how do I feel when something happens. So one of the greatest things I could be called is dad. The second is coach. And I know, Kevin, you've coached. When you walk around town and you are coaching 3, 4, 5 teams a year for the last 10 years, you see these kids grow up. And they grow up with a positive influence in their life. Starts with coaching. They also attract their families in, and those families have exposure to our town. They see what our town is made of, the community. You know, I have a kid on my baseball team. His family is the Grex family. They used to own Village Pizza. I have kids that I went to school with. I'm coaching their kids today, and vice versa. So they chose to stay in Bartlett as well because they had that small town feeling. And that's really, to Kevin's point, is really an important part of keeping this community growing and keep it a small town feel, is having those sports, baseball, soccer, football, all those sports as part of the community. They bring a lot of exposure to our downtown. They bring a lot of exposure to our businesses. I'm sure there's some studies out there to show you that the more you have as far as community events and community sports programs, and also in conjunction with a safe town, our property values continue to grow versus declining. So I personally feel that that is a entire web that keeps those values going together, or the values of the homes growing. So, yeah, I think that's one of the things for me, is you go to Jewel and I see a kid and he's like, hey coach, how are you? Or, you know, I see somebody I went to school with back in high school, before we even had a high school in Bartlett, and they still chose to stay in Bartlett after all these years. So, and I'm sure Kevin Wallace has had the same experiences all your years you've coached. It's rewarding, but it also makes you realize how important the community is.
The kids I coached are out of college now.
We're looking for houses here.
But they are coming back. They come back to all of our festivals, and they still say, hey, coach. I'm like, really? You're 24, and you're still calling me coach?
Have they come back to live here yet?
Some of them have, yeah. Yeah.
One of the other cool things that our police department does is they really get involved with community events. And I'll give you an example of one that just was this weekend. The police department made their way out to a few football games at Rosika, and they actually announced the kids coming onto the field for their homecoming. So it was really inspiring for those kids to have a police officer from their hometown announcing them coming out of the chute. So they were very excited about that. Those small little things touch those kids' lives to the point where they say, one, I'm not scared of a police officer, and two, I feel safe in my community. And that is worth its weight in gold. And our police department is very good at being part of the community in a positive way.
Yeah, I think our chief challenge is each beat officer to have some type of an interaction on every one of their shifts. If it's stopping by a lemonade stand or doing something with a group of people or something. So it's just incredibly talented leadership on our police force.
Is that a relatively new thing, or has that been part of Bartlett?
Jeff's had that going since he's been around, I know. Patrick did something like that. Yep.
You don't have to look far. You can go on Facebook and see their interactions and how they touch people's lives. And, I mean, we gave how many awards to people that, you know.
And they go the extra mile with the DARE program, and we go the extra mile with that, and with the youth academies. So the youth academy, they have what do we call it? The teen police training. So we bring kids from the high school, and they can go through a certain 4 or 5 week, 10-week program under the police department, and then Citizens Police Academy. That's what I was looking for too. We have to take numbers for Citizens Police Academy, and they come in and figure out how they can make their community safer. And yeah.
Well, I think I can add to that. I've noticed the whole time I've been here is that people in this community do want to be involved. It's like almost someone is in something.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, when I was growing up in Hampshire, it's not too much different from when I left it. There's little things that happen, but there hasn't been a lot of growth, and it's fine. That's what people want. But I feel like people here want that mindful, sustainable growth. And then on the flip side, Elmhurst is unrecognizable from when I lived there.
Yeah.
It's almost like everything just came back. You would go to that downtown, and I don't see hardly anything I recognize. Even the buildings are different.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of just seems like, I don't know, people kind of like just passing through.
Okay.
Whereas here, it's like we catch the same feeling, but we know we have to grow because we also can't fall backwards.
It was a good balance.
In a good way or a bad way, Elmhurst? For you personally, in a good way or a bad way, it's changed? I mean, do you like it, or are you like?
I don't like it. But,
I think there's extreme changes, one way or the other, or lack of changes, you know, and I think it's the balance. Bartlett's been balanced pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
So what, over the last, pick the time period, but recent past 5 to 10 years, has happened in Bartlett that's been different or special? It could be, we'll lead you a little bit, it could be the downtown, could be the business park, it could be the trails or connectivity, it could be schools. So what are some of the things that either y'all have been involved in or just have really started to happen to make Bartlett, again, a little, just that much better or more special?
I think you have to look at the growth that we've had over the last 5 years.
Get up in your microphone, or nobody's going to hear you.
I said, I think for sure you have to look at the growth we've seen over the past 5 years. It's just been unbelievable, and it's still continuing. And the work that staff has done, we have an oldies that's going to open up shortly. And, it's just, the growth has just been incredible.
And it's not slowing down.
You've got a staff that cares too, a staff that's from Bartlett. They're not implants from other cities just looking for high-paying jobs. They're from Bartlett. They grew up in Bartlett. They raised their families in Bartlett. So that staff, you got a great board now, a cohesive board. From the stories I've heard in the past, the board was kind of like this. And now we're like that a little bit, but we kind of figure things out. Just read the paper. We vote yes on everything.
I think one of the biggest achievements, I think, is our transition to Lake Michigan water. I think people are pleased with that, especially the people on the south side of Bartlett.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
they were getting well water. So
there were some concerns for the longest time in the first 20 years of me living here that our water was not a healthy source of water. That in the back of people's minds was a kind of a problem. This board did a great job of kind of figuring out what our best source would be, and made some hard choices, and brought in some high quality water, which is a long-term change to the village in a positive way. Over the last, I think if I were to say a few things over the last 5 or so years that we have done, that the village has, not just the village, but the whole entire community has done, is kind of growing out different organizations. Like the Bartlett Chamber kind of absorbed Hanover Park's chamber, and the Bartlett Chamber is now thriving more. Rotary got a little bit more involved in the village and put a clock tower downtown and did a few other things. You know, everybody came together for the Merry and Bright and made it a bigger event. It's not just, the village driving this or this board driving this. It's organizations that are coming together, the chamber and the village and the Lions Club doing the hot dogs and National Night Out, coming together and making these events a very large community event. And
Arts and Bartlett.
that's really gelled in the last 5 to 7 years.
Well, I'd say also economic development. The TIF district was successful. Tony and Scott and EDC are bringing businesses to town that are part of our cohesiveness. And they're smart businesses. You're bringing in car dealers that generate a nice sales tax that benefits the city. The development of the golf course and the improvements at the golf course. Things that have been kind of kicked down the road for a long time are starting to be implemented and taken care of. And they've all been solid decisions, thought out. The bike plan, we hired a consultant here, a couple of years ago, and they've laid out a 20-year plan. So, Paula's doing things, and staff are doing things that are a map for the future. It's not just a one and done, I'm here for a couple of years and I'm out of here. It's a growth plan. And that's, bike paths, other things. You've got Dan in Public Works that, they're implementing things 5 and 6 years out. The planning is there. Mm-hmm. And it's good for us to know that 5 years ahead of time, that 5 years down the road, hey, we're going to be dropping a lot of money on this or that. But then Dan explains, well, the pipes are 50 years old, and then most of the community boomed 45 years ago. You have to know 5 years from now that it's time to pay the piper. And as a board, if we know that, then we can plan accordingly. As a staff, we can plan accordingly. So everybody's working together.
I'll go next. I only been here for 2 years as a trustee. I was on the Plan Commission prior to that. But I've lived here my whole life, like I said earlier. And the one thing that I can say that I see has been a change, whether it be 15 years, 10 years, is we have broken through the barrier, the stigma of being a bedroom community. We, for years, I feel like growth wasn't as popular as it is now as far as development and stuff. But through the good leadership and the boards that we've had over the last few years, I feel that with staff and the board, the developments that we've put forward and the changes with the water and the Brewster Creek Business Park has appealed to the growth and the needs of our residents. And without going all the way to the extreme, as Trustee Gansey was saying at Elmhurst, we have balanced it. We have balanced it enough where I feel like the residents feel comfortable spending their money in our town. They feel like there's a reason to stay here and spend their money versus many, many years ago, the only real store that was used was Jewel. And then they had a couple other grocery stores that kind of fizzled away. And I think now we're seeing a good path forward as far as growth without bombarding it with corporate America and just, big box stores in our downtown area. I think it's balanced pretty well.
I'm just finishing my freshman year as a trustee. The thing I picked up is that it seems like staff works together with all the different heads of departments. So we've got a planning commission now that's more streamlined than they've ever been before, which helps helps economic development bring in new businesses because the hurdles that they used to have to jump through when they're developing a site, they're reduced, they're minimized, they've been modernized. It's a fresh set of eyes.
So personal measurement I have when I first moved here, I would leave or my friends wanted to go elsewhere, and now everyone wants to come here when they want to hang out. So all my friends outside of Bartlett want to come to Bartlett to hang out here.
So stay with that for a second, because I think EDC and a couple other people said it used to be that folks would go maybe to, say, a St. Charles or a Geneva and go out of town, and now they're staying home, and even the kids, the younger people, are staying here at 120 Live, or, forgive me, I think maybe, Mayor, it was you, but it said, you can get any kind of food that you want here in Bartlett now. So let me test that with y'all. Do you feel like that's starting to happen, where Bartlett is a place where you guys, hey, we can get everything we need right here? We don't have to go out to someplace else that somebody says is that special place.
It's starting.
I don't think there's any doubt about that, and we go out on a regular basis, and it's very unusual. I mean it sincerely, for us to go outside of the Bartlett area, you know, for lunch or dinner or something to that effect. I think that we have so much to offer right now that, you know, I don't have to go to another community.
Yeah, I remember specifically when 120 Live plans came in for their outdoor patio, and I was very skeptical about a skinny little outdoor patio that's right next to a fence, and people love it out there. They just love it out there. I mean, it's a little bit bigger than I expected, but it gets people out on the outdoor bar. It makes you feel like you're not in Bartlett necessarily. You're having a beer on the outdoor bar. They have music. They've done it well. I think they just touched the surface on what they could do. And now Moore just kind of blew the top off of that with the second-story patio.
JC's just opened their patio.
JC's just opened their back patio.
And people want a grocery store, and everybody seems to love Aldi, so I think we kind of hit a home run there after 30-something years. And no lack of effort, though, that's for sure.
The transformation of the streets of Bartlett is clear and apparent, and adding an Aldi to that outlot pad, it's going to make that streets of Bartlett feel more intimate, and you're going to get that grocery store. Like you said, people do. People are very passionate about Aldi, so that's good. Are there things in the next 5 years or so that will help push you forward growth, yet also, as you're looking at it, maintain that small town feel? So talk, for example, about maybe the TIF area on the north end of town, or some other things that you are in motion or you would like to see, and how it might impact Bartlett. And recognizing it's going to be your personal opinion.
Well, I think what we have mentioned just briefly in passing to each other is that we all would like to have some strategic planning meetings for that, and come up with a cohesive plan to tie that Lake Street corridor in to downtown. But we need to be on board with what we want to see there. And I don't think we really have had a chance to have a whole lot of discussion over that, what that would be. But I know we're looking forward to it.
I don't think until, I think a village can only handle so much on their plate at a time. Christy would agree with that. She's got 5 plates spinning at one time with the building that's going on out in Brewster Creek and Blue Heron and everywhere else. And then all the stuff that went on downtown recently, and it's still going on downtown. So the board, I feel, needs to get out in front of the Lake Street thing and give staff a vision of how we think that might be best utilized. And I think that's our next step as a board, is to get that down and get an understanding of, hey, if we can get this to go through, what do we want it to look like? What would best serve our residents in that particular area?
Sure. Yeah, my thought is always maintaining and making sure you don't slack off. You lose 25 pounds, you got to keep the 25 pounds off. So we attract all these businesses. Let's maintain and keep the businesses. So let's not get comfortable. So 5 years from now, all of a sudden things are starting to go the other direction.
I remember that, and it may have been you who said it when we were interviewing for this, right? There's attraction, but there's also retention. And I think I know that's part of what we will want to build out in this campaign, is making, as much of Bartlett as is possible feel that connectivity, that sense of community that you all do. And that means, so a business is attracted, business owners, leaders want to stay here because they feel that connection. And certainly, again, you have it here. So part of what we do from an economic development standpoint is always attraction, but it's also certainly retention, because it's harder, right? Once somebody moves out, it's harder to bring somebody else in to fill that vacancy.
I know we would like to see some commercial retail on the west side of 59. The neighbors, the residents out there feel a little left out. That's how they voice it anyway.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting what we can do with branding, because branding is is another way that we can work to retain the businesses that we have. It's kind of like if somebody wants you to go to Vegas, they don't show you Municipal Hall, right? They're going to show you, all the new fancy hotels and the attractions that are there. So part of our branding needs to be that, hey, have you seen this in downtown Bartlett?
Right.
Have you seen what you can do down there? The walkability, everything else. So.
And what it could be.
What it could be, yeah.
Developers looking at it.
Are there other things, I want to come back to that in a second, but are there other things that are happening over the next few years that you think, again, will make Bartlett that much more special or create an even stronger sense of community?
I think over in the last budget, we approved more bike paths, and we've updated, we've added, we've maintained bike paths better, and I think that's going to continue. And I don't know which trustee, we were having a conversation, and they said to me, the residents just love the bike paths. And they do, so.
Well, there's a whole new corner, the northwest corner of 59 and Bartlett Road, that houses, retail, all that's yet to come.
That's going to be a significant impact.
Yeah.
100 and some additional houses. Actually, with the townhouses across the tracks, it's probably more than that. Christy,
There's 114 townhomes
across the tracks?
on the north side of the tracks, yeah.
And then on this side, there's how many houses? 100?
95 single-family, 92 duplexes, and 65 ranch homes.
Oh, 200 and some new residents, yeah.
A little bit of retail over there.
There is 6 acres of retail space. 4 acres of it is buildable.
That's on the south side of the track.
That is right at the northwest corner of 59 and West Bartlett, where the retaining wall was installed.
So there's a lot, that whole corner, I mean, I've been here 45 years, it's been a cornfield.
Cornfields the whole time.
So that's gonna be a big change. And then by Moretti's, the car dealerships, that's gonna be a big change. And then whatever we decide is gonna happen west of, or south of Villa Olivia, south of the tracks there.
Yeah.
The housing development, it's in a sense contagious, right? We're going to see them build, and then we have other areas that are around there that are being looked at now for more residential or more commercial because they see the activity there. They see the communities and, the village is invested in this development and the community is investing in their new house there, so they want to be part of that. So I think we're going to see a continual growth all the way in that whole area over there. I have lots of developers that want to, bring small businesses to town, and they're looking for avenues to try to find a place to develop. And I think that's one of the areas that we have to look at is our downtown, some of the empty land and some of the empty parking, and if it can be redeveloped.
Oh, yeah, the parking lots downtown, right?
The parking lots, some of the older buildings on the west side of Oak. So just a long-term, redevelopment. Giving more opportunity, because if we are filled out and there's an opportunity for other small businesses to come in, we want to have a place for them.
Okay.
One other thing I was thinking about, talk about improvements and whatnot, and one of the things that I don't think we hit on is that we have one of the best park districts in the entire state of Illinois, and it may not be a bad idea, to talk to our director, Rita Fletcher at the Park District, just get a little input if we're talking about branding.
Okay, excellent idea. Yeah, thank you. So back to where the mayor was going here, how do you, in your opinion, how can this campaign help Bartlett? And recognizing it's going to be over the next couple of years, and in our experience, once you start, you keep going, whether it's with internal resources or external resources to be determined. But how do you see this campaign helping Bartlett?
Well, first off, the one thing that comes to my mind is the fact we just talked about the development on West Bartlett Road and Route 59, and this would aid in residential homes being constructed and built, and I think it's just going to happen. But with commercial development, that might be something that we could, point our finger at if try and get some people in there for commercial development.
The other thing you have to do is tap into the resources at the museum. You know, we all talked about family history, and we've got what I think is a phenomenal museum. We haven't even scraped the tip of the iceberg with the information and the knowledge that Pam has. You know, she posts stuff on Facebook, and I'm amazed every time I read it, and I've been here a long time. And again, that might be for the new people, just to see what they've got here. Did you know? You know, and, you know, this was a one-horse town, you know, whatever the trivia is, but, you know, people like that kind of stuff.
I would agree with Joe. I love reading Pam's posts and just the history of Bartlett. And, you know, I think one time I read something, I'm like, it was about my family. I'm like, I didn't even know this, so.
Well, okay, so I'm a little brag. I just got back from England and Scotland, and you go to these buildings that are, I stayed in a bed and breakfast, and I was in the oldest bar, the oldest pub in England, the oldest pub in Edinburgh, and there's history there. So I come back and I think, well, we're only 200 years old. We shouldn't be thinking just short term, like think 100 years out, right? I mean, why not? Just history. There's so much history.
We have a historical society too, I believe, so that you could maybe communicate with also.
Yep, absolutely.
What I would like to see this campaign do is kind of flip. I know Scott did a lot of work calling places or trying to work with businesses to come here. I would like to see a measurement of people now calling us. Like,
okay, good.
Because now they're seeing Bartlett, they know what it's like, they see the growth, and like that would be a big measurement for me to see who is now calling us to look for a space or whatever they want to do here, or even like other residents looking to move here.
I have a question.
Yes.
Go ahead. You done?
Yes.
I want to ask you a question. All right, we're sitting down here for the first time talking, okay? What is the next step? Where do we go from here? Are we going to meet again? Are you going to put some thoughts together? Are we meeting as a group? I don't know what's next.
So we're going to continue through the fall, meeting with people, some one-on-one, some small groups. Asking questions, listening, gathering information, stories. And then we're going to be putting out an electronic survey, an email survey, and then working through different channels, Park District, for example, Chamber, et cetera, to push that information, push that questionnaire out so that we can get engagement from the community and then other community events as well. And then in the winter, we'll be developing a campaign platform and campaign concepts, of which there will be a number of them. And, we'll work with staff in terms of how many are brought to you all for your review and consideration. And then we would see the campaign rolling out in the spring. We want to make sure we get through the winter and into sort of an April, May timeframe, which, by the way, again, we recognize is next budget year. So since it's designed to be, we go year to year, but it's designed to go year 1, year 2, year 3, we really see it ramping up and rolling out in the spring and into year 2, and then continuing on from there.
So in December and January, we'll be getting the results of all of this kind of packaged into the campaign and the creative concept, and get your feedback on that, and keep it moving.
All right. Then basically, we're not going to see any of this until later. The one thing that I do want to mention, and I think it's very important, personally I feel it's important, I think we have to get some feedback on on U46, on our school district.
Okay.
Right? My kids went through U46, they're doing fine. I know some of the other students have, but I've heard, I'll leave it at that. I think we need to have some feedback on on U46.
It's all a part of the branding, and I don't know that it would be a grand idea to take numbers of U46 in the whole.
That's right.
Certainly the schools that are in Bartlett.
Correct.
Because there's a significant difference in the schools, and then some of it's by design, some of it has other specialties, like I know South Elgin has a specialty for broadcasting and different things like that, but That's one of the things that my wife and I looked into, and we didn't look at U46 as a whole. We looked at Centennial, we looked at Bartlett High School, and we were very pleased with that, so.
Yeah, well, and education is changing, so I think those are good points, right? There's U46, and then there's the Bartlett schools, and then
The second largest school district in the state of Illinois, so.
right. And then there's the schools in Bartlett, and then there's the programs or the specialties within schools as well.
One thing we didn't mention, not speaking of schools, is I think we have a pretty strong group of scouts and stuff in the area too, different scouting groups. They're in front of the board once in a while. And I'm not sure, I have no reference as to how well attended our scouting groups are versus other communities, but it seems like we had a bunch of them in here not long ago because they got recognized for helping out at National Night Out. But that's another portion of the community that you can tell where there's parents stepping up and leading these groups.
Which I think goes back to shared values, family tradition, history.
So another measurement, I believe you said you're doing a community survey
Yes.
at some point. I guess I would like to see a measurement of, like how many people, how likely are they to recommend Bartlett, and see that number go up, or awareness of everything we're talking about. We're all like the extra involved people, so I just would like to see a survey, the data.
I wanted to mention this. It wasn't in the memo because we've been working on this actually as recent as today. One of the nice things about the QR code that you're going to see in the next few months is the QR code, it extracts information from where it is received. So if somebody fills out a QR code survey at Marion Bright, we'll know those surveys came from Marion Bright. If it's on the Village Facebook, we'll know it came from them, Chamber of Commerce. So we'll be able to pinpoint actually where the survey data, which area, which basket it fits in.
Surveys came from the Village of Bartlett, employees.
It was that last word, employees, that changed the entire question.
You mean Joey did 35 of them?
So, last question as we roll out of here, because you've got other business to attend to. Just if you were to sum up Bartlett in one word or a few words, just what immediately pops into your mind? And after the first one, if somebody says ditto or same, those are not acceptable answers. So what just immediately pops into your head when you think Bartlett?
Wonderful.
Connected.
Safe.
Home.
Yeah, home.
Very wonderful, safe, home,
Connected.
connected,
Generational.
generational, meaning
There's
across
multiple families that have their families that are all generational living here.
safe. You said, and then,
Agree with all of them.
sorry, I didn't say agree. What, anything else that comes to mind? All right. Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate your time, your attention, your input, your enthusiasm, your leadership. Thank you.
Real quick, trust, you said home? That is the key word. I love that. When you said home, that was great.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Trustee DEYNE, seconded by Trustee Hopkins. Will clerk please call the roll?
Trustee DEYNE?
Yes.
Gansey?
Yes.
GUNSTEEN?
Yes.
Hopkins? LaPorte?
Yes.
Swansky?
Yes.
Committee of the Whole is adjourned. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second part, Act 2 of the Village of Bartlett Committee of the Whole meeting for October 3rd, 2023. I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to again please call the roll.
Trustee DEYNE?
Here.
Gansey?
Here.
GUNSTEEN?
Here.
Hopkins?
Here.
LaPorte?
Here.
Swansky? Here. President Wallace?
Still here. First thing we have on the committee this evening is Building and Zoning Committee, Chairman GUNSTEEN.
Thank you, President Wallace. First item we have tonight is YLM Logistics. Petitioner is requesting a site plan review for the proposed 20,000 square foot office warehouse facility. The office will consist of 5,000 square feet divided into 2 levels, with the second level being a mezzanine. The remaining 17,500 square feet will be dedicated for warehouse use. The site contains 36 parking spaces for office and warehouse employees as well as visitors, which means zoning ordinance requirements. There are 69 trailer and semi parking spaces. The petitioner is requesting a special use permit to allow outdoor truck, trailer, and semi storage. And with that, I will turn it over to Christy Stone.
Thank you, Chairman Gunstein. This is one of the few remaining lots on the east side of Munger Road. It's very similar to a site plan we approved for Tomart in 2020. The building elevations are primarily gray with some second-story office windows where the mezzanine is located. They are providing evergreen trees along Humbrock Circle to help screen all the truck and trailer parking stalls. Staff is requesting that the board forward this to the Planning and Zoning Commission to hold the public hearing.
Does anybody have any questions?
Looks pretty standard to me.
I think it's pretty well laid out, and the landscaping plan looks pretty sufficient from what I can tell.
They exceed our landscaping requirement.
If nobody has any questions, we'll send this on to the Plan Commission.
Instead of bringing it back to the board, can we have it maybe back to the board?
Go straight to board and...
Yeah, we don't need to come back to committee.
Pretty basic.
It'll save them a couple weeks.
Okay. I'm sure they won't object to that.
Yep. All right, Dano.
All right, item number 2, we have a thoroughfare plan, and I'm just going to turn it right over to staff.
3 minutes.
3 minutes? Okay. And no questions. Ignore that request. All right. The village adopted a thoroughfare plan in 1988, so we thought we would kind of go through when we had the Hawk Hollow school conversion, the Fair Oaks extension was discussed, so we thought we'd go over some of the other projects that are in that as well. So I'm going to go through some of the projects that have been completed. We completed Struckman and Mayflower as part of Silvercrest. In 1993, IDOT stopped studying the Fox Valley Freeway, which you saw west of 59. In 2005, South Devon Avenue was extended to West Bartlett Road. In 2010, Munger Road was extended to West Bartlett Road. And then in 2023, we vacated part of the Fair Oaks Road extension. So there's a few remaining areas that we have for discussion. The Oak Avenue realignment, the Prospect Avenue extension, the Reading/Regency and Auburn and Jervey connections, the remaining Struckman and Fair Oaks extension rights-of-way, the old Stearns Road right-of-way. So back in the 70s, the Elgin O'Hare was originally planned to go east and west directly north of where Ford Lane is now. IDOT acquired a lot of the land in the 70s as well as some in 91. As part of that, Oak Avenue was projected to extend northward and be an overpass over the Elgin O'Hare. Those plans changed in 1990, and as recently as 2017, IDOT completed a feasibility study and recommended the Oak Avenue realignment still move forward. This is kind of the layout of what that would look like. Just to give you an idea, based on that study, traffic in 2014 on Oak Avenue was about 5,400 cars. They were projecting in 2040 it would increase to only 6,000. So it's not making a huge impact on the amount of traffic. I have that in there for the next slide, where we talk about the Prospect Avenue extension. So originally the plan was to have Prospect Avenue connect as a road to Park Boulevard to create a 4-way intersection. Hale Avenue would also be extended northward. In 2003, Christian Tabernacle Church submitted a concept plan to accommodate the proposed right-of-way. Pavia Marting did a study in 2003 and recommended that the Prospect Avenue extension go forward. In 2008, Christian Tabernacle sold the property that's highlighted in yellow to accommodate this future right-of-way. According to Pavia Marting's study, the average daily traffic in 2003 was 550 cars on Prospect. If this road were to go through as proposed on the thoroughfare plan, it would increase to 5,200 cars.
We can just take this off the book.
That's why we're bringing it up, because we did receive a concept plan earlier in the year. If you recall, there were some concerns about the connection, and the committee at that point was thinking possibly just having that as an emergency access.
Good idea.
So I wanted to give you the background on the traffic study that we had prepared. so that we can discuss it before that project comes through as a full application.
I agree with trustee Hopkins. Take it off.
And then the other one I've heard from a few trustees talking about some of these dead ends that the village has. Reading Drive was to connect northward to Regency Drive. Maryville owns that property. As part of their deed for that land, if they allow anything to happen on that other than their child care program, that property reverts back to the state, and Maryville would lose their rights to the property. And then for the connections on Auburn and Jervy, the Forest Preserve District acquired that land in 2003. The map to the right shows a critical wetland that's highlighted in red, and some regulatory wetlands that are in green. The Forest Preserve District has indicated they would not support any roadways through their property. It's possible they would consider in the future doing maybe a pedestrian connection that would go from Auburn north towards Holly Drive, but they would want to make sure that it stays out of any of the wetland areas that they have. But that is something that they would need to plan in their capital budget, just like we do. They go several years out. So if that's something that we'd like to pursue, that's not something that they'd be willing to add to their capital budget at this time.
So would that be similar to a, like I've seen it in different communities or different, actually, forest district areas. One of them that kind of comes to mind is in, over by Carroll Stream, where they've got like the stilted walk paths. Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be something I'd definitely be interested in pursuing, like a bike/walk path.
I agree. I think that's one of the most critical connections that we need to get residents from downtown Bartlett directly to the intersection of Stearns and 59, without having to go all the way through town.
I agree. I had called them once asking, and it sounded like even this, like for the Holly, like they have to vote on it, right?
Right. They have a board just like we do, and they have their capital improvement budget just like we do. And so it has to go through their planning process as well. So it's not as simple as just making a phone call.
Or anything we can, especially the straight to Jervy.
So the regulatory wetland does come south. So that's what they were really concerned about, having any sort of east-west connection. They're more leaning towards having a connection that would come north.
There's currently a path there. Yeah. It's been there for 25 years.
It is not Forest Preserve recognized.
I know. But that is the path that's... Footpath that's been used for the reasons we're talking about putting an actual path in. So.
Maybe we can get a hold of Al Murphy and see if he can push that forward. Yeah.
And then again, with the other remaining rights-of-way that the village owns for Struckman would be north and south of the railroad tracks in Silvercrest and Harmony Grove, and the Fair Oaks extension that runs through the enclave. There is also a right-of-way that the village still owns for Old Stearns Road that was never formally vacated. The north 33 feet should go to the townhomes. The south 33 feet should be conveyed to the Forest Preserve District.
Going back to the Struckman, who owns the property that those two right-of-ways are in?
The village owns the right-of-way.
They own the right-of-way? If we vacated those right-of-ways, would those be lots that could be sold for development?
We would have to look to see if it could be, if they would meet our requirements, our lot size requirements.
Okay. It would be something I think would be worth it. Instead of just having a dead end there for the next 20 years, it would be, you know, I would think it would be wise to look at a development there on both sides.
How much more room is there when you go to the west?
For the west?
Where it says Struckman right-of-way, is there like how much space do we have in that right-of-way?
The right-of-ways?
North.
This right-of-way I know is 60.
No, on the other side of the tracks.
Down here?
No, the big letters that say Struckman right-of-way.
Oh, this?
Yes.
This is for the Forest Preserve property.
That is?
Yeah, the Forest Preserve owns this triangular shaped piece. We have an easement through it, but it doesn't actually align with where the roadways were.
Talking about to the east of the black line,
Yeah.
that small little triangle?
It's either that or it'd be sold to each of the neighboring houses and split in half. Both sides.
Make it easier to plow snow.
And then I just thought I would show a couple subdivisions where we do have rights-of-way for future connections. One is down as part of the, off of Petersdorf. There's Harbeck Way for whenever the farmland to the west develops. And then we have Bay Meadows Drive, currently dead ends at a property. We have been in talk periodically with, the property owner who currently has the land up for sale, so there would be potential for a secondary access point for those properties. And then Litchfield Lane dead ends at the properties to the north, the horse farm. We had plans at one point several years ago as a concept plan to re-subdivide that. It was a little longer than 3 minutes. I apologize.
It was perfect.
Can we get those slides?
Yes.
I think you have.
What are next steps?
We're gonna have the ones that are all marked up.
Well, the next steps are just this was just informational. So when we get the concept plans or the development plans for some of these projects, you have a background on what the plan showed and why staff is supporting either making the connection or to remove that from the comp plan.
So can I ask you if you could do us a little favor? Sure. So unlike the Struckman, where everyone knew that the railroad was never going to let that go across Struckman, ever. That wasn't going to happen. So really, it wasn't a board decision. Could you put something out to the board of these where you think, like, give us the feasible ones? These are ones that are really actually something that we should consider higher importance than other ones that are probably really unlikely?
Sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. That's all we have to report
Do
today.
you have any other questions?
No.
Thank you, Chairman Gunstein. Finance Committee, Chairman LaPorte. Let's talk taxes.
Here we go. The proposed property tax levy for 2023 totals $12,874,801 and is $1,090,905 or 9.26% more than the prior year's extended amount. The general corporate levy is 10.37% more than the 2022 extension and is $750,000 more than last year's actual levy amount. The police pension levy is increasing 20.49% or $456,158 over the prior year extension. The same amount of $319,175 of general fund balance surplus used to keep the 2022 police pension levy unchanged from 2021 is proposed again for the 2023 levy. The remaining increase is due to higher than expected pension costs and low investment returns over the last year. The debt service levy is lower from the prior year estimated extension amount by $48,159 or 1.62%. Overall, the levy increase not supported by added taxable property from the Brewster Creek TIF closing is 4.35%. Homes valued around $400,000 will see a $40 to $45 increase in the village portion of their tax bill. And for further explanation, we'll turn it over to Todd.
Thank you, Chairman LaPorte. I'll go, like was just mentioned, we did go over a lot of this in the budget in March, April, when we passed the budget. One thing that does get calculated later is the pension levy, so I will talk about that a little bit more. But first, like was gone over already, there are three basic levies. One is for the general operating fund, one is for our debt service, the other is for our police pension levy. A big factor that goes into it that I don't usually try to calculate is the burden level between the three counties. That's calculated by the state. For the 2023 levy, with the closing of the TIF district, we've got quite a bit more property coming from, DuPage than we do Cook going on to the property tax levels. So I think it's gonna, change the burden levels a little bit. It should, reduce the Cook County, level, increase DuPage County, and then Kane would stay about the same or go down slightly because it's such a small part. Overall, about $90 million in this equalized assessed value will be coming from the Brewster Creek TIF. So that's gonna, about 5 million to 10 million from Cook County, 85 million or more from the DuPage County portion. Again, so we start the levy process during the budget. This levy, the 2023 levy, goes to fund the current year that we're in. Even though money is actually received after this fiscal year is closed, it goes to fund this year. The only one that debt service is actually for our debt service payments in 2024, and the pension is for the pension required contribution that started May 1 of 2023. So it's a little confusing on the timing, but it does start with the budget where we say this is how much money we need to fund the budget. So the proposed levy is $7,269,094 for the general, $2,682,060 for the police pension, $2,923,647 for the debt service, for a total of $12,874,000. I know there's a lot of numbers, so I'll try to use rounded numbers going forward from here. But this graph shows, for truth in taxation purposes, compares our actual levy to what was extended last year. So the difference between the actual levy and the extended is the Cook County still adds 3% for the general levy and the police pension levy. So they tack on a 3% loss factor or loss allowance to what we levy. And for debt service, they add 5%. DuPage County quit doing that. They only add to it or adjust to it what was actually refunded the prior year. So it's a minimal amount. You see that later when we get into the rates. So this chart, for truth and taxation purposes, shows an overall increase of $1,090,000, or just about 9%. So this chart shows the actual levy to the previous year's levy. That's where the increase in the general is $750,000. We'll talk about these increases a little bit more in detail. So the total to the actual levy, or increase from the prior year actual levy, $1,255,000, or just under 11%. I've got the list just for your references. You can go back. You can see prior year levies. In regard to the $750,000 increase, this is to capture the extra EAV that is being added from the closing of the Brewster Creek TIF. So currently, that $700,000 is going into the TIF municipal fund, and that's being used by the village for TIF expenses. As that comes onto our general tax rolls, it will if we don't do anything, it will reduce what everybody else pays, or we're adding it to pick up that extra without changing. So the addition to the levy should be offset by the addition of the EAV and not cause property taxes to go up in that way. Again, about $85 million from DuPage, $5 million from Cook. Those are pretty conservative estimates based on the 2023 or 2022 assessed values. This is just a breakdown of our debt service levy. We still have a little. We did refund the 2016 bonds. Those were for the police station. Some of those are still being paid off as 2016 bonds. The rest of it is the 2022A bonds. Those are the police station bonds. 2017 bonds are for the fire station. Originally, they were issued in 2007, refunded in 2017. The $38,000 that's being abated is the portion that the fire district pays for what they have outside of the village boundaries. 2019 bonds, the part that is being abated is for the Devon Avenue excess flow. It comes from the sewer fund. And the 2021 A bonds is all for the water connection. We refinanced the loans that we had with the DuPage Water Commission. So our total debt service levy, just over $2.9 million. That's up just about $20,000, $25,000. That's due to the Brewster Creek TIF closing. We were paying about $29,000 from the TIF towards the debt service, towards the fire station bonds. Moving on to the police pension part of the levy. So this year we are proposing to increase our levy from $2.2 million up to the 2.6 or almost 2.7 million. It does show our annual returns there. These annual returns go up and down quite a bit. For our actuarial calculations, they are smoothed a little bit. They do affect our required contributions. Just to note, though, our investments are meant to be for a long-term range. So we try not to pay attention to the short term, but it does affect our levy a little bit. So the actual required contribution, according to the actuary calculation, is just over $3 million. We are proposing to increase the levy from last year by the $478,000, leaving the $319,000 to be funded from the general fund surplus. Our contribution does go up based on one factor was our low rate of return last year. We usually budget a little over $3.5 million in investment returns, and when our annual return was 0.75, we didn't reach that amount. We assume about 6.75% is what our assumed rate of return is. Some of the increase, $156,000, is due to we're continuing to try to get our assumed rate of return down to 6.5%. This will bring it down to 6.625%. So we're almost there as far as getting our assumed rate of return down. We had 2 service retirements in the last year, hired 6 Tier 2 police officers. So right now we have 36 out of 62 actives that are in Tier 2. Now those pension benefits are not as costly as the Tier 1. There is some news about whether those requirements are going to need to be, the benefits increased due to meeting the Social Security standards and things like that. Again, so the overall increase to our levy, 21.7%, that's about a 4.1% increase to the total levy. And adding that to the slight increase to the debt service, that's where we came up to the 4.35% increase to the total levy. And we did a little looking at houses in Cook County and in DuPage County in about the $400,000 market range, which typically has their village portion of the tax bill is between $900 and $1,000. So that's where the $40 to $45 increase comes from. Here's the EAV history. We have we're finally saying that we're going to cross the low, I guess, from, let me adjust back in 2009, our EAV peaked at $1,366,000. We're going to cross that mark finally after all the housing values went down. Another note is that Cook County just came out with their preliminary rates yesterday. So I estimated, middle of the road, 7% for Cook County. Even though it was a triennial assessment, it came back at 26% increase. So Cook County went up quite a bit. So we'll see how much it will be adjusted going forward from there. But this is what affects the rates. It doesn't really affect what is paid on the tax bill, but it does affect the rates going forward. So here's our estimated rate based on an EAV of $443 million. Well, the actual EAV for 2022 was about $485 million. So these rates are going to be quite a bit lower. The 22 rate actually ended up being about 95 cents. But you can see the way it's calculated, you got the full levy, you add to it the loss factor. Again, that's 3% in the general, and police, 5% debt service. And then this is using an estimated burden of 37.7%, comes up with the rate. So the total burden for Cook County, just over $5 million. For DuPage County then, the EAV for 2022, and then estimated about a 5% increase, $961 million, with the burden of 61.78%. Again, I added about $20,000 is it for a loss factor. Prior year adjustments, there's really not a lot of refunds in the DuPage County side. So a calculated rate is just about 82 cents, and that's slightly down from the prior year. So overall, the estimated EAV of $1,411,000, it's going to be quite a bit more than that with the large Cook County increase. We show the piece of the pie here again. These are the 22 rates. Village of Bartlett, about 10%. The big 63%. That's the school districts, and then all the other districts are listed there. This is the 21 rates. I didn't have the 22 rates yet, but they're similar to DuPage County as far as the 10% portion for the village. The school district is a little bit less than Cook County. So as far as going forward, a notice will be published in the paper this Friday. We'll have a public hearing the next meeting. We'll set the estimated levy. The levy needs to be adopted December 05. It needs to be filed with the counties by the last Tuesday month of December. So that's it. That's the first look. I think. Yeah, if you have any questions or comments.
Yeah, for 2022, so on a $400,000 house, we're indicating it'll go up $40 to $45. So that was 2023. What's 2022? So when the taxpayer looks at their bill, what was it last year? And we're saying it's going to be $40 to $45 this year, right? So what was it last year?
What was the full amount they paid last year?
Yeah. What was the increase year over year? I think it was like $12 or something.
Yeah, I think it was less. It was under 2% last year.
So we're saying it's going to go, so if they look at their bill last year, 2022, it was a $15 increase. This year, 2023, it's going to be a $45 increase, right? Or it'll show $45 based on that $400,000.
Yeah, yes. What we did last year was we did not increase the pension levy at all. The full $319,000 came out of the general fund.
Well, my point is, the taxpayer is going to look at the bill and they're saying it's going to go from 15, it's going to triple in their eyes, right? Am I $15 to $45 over in 1 year?
Oh, the amount of the increase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I'm just
devil's
advocate. As a taxpayer opens up their bill, that's what they're going to see. So last year they'll save $15, this year it'll save $45
The Bartlett portion.
for the Bartlett portion.
Increase in Cook County is gonna trump all that.
No, I get it. Well, groceries, gasoline, all that stuff. I mean, nobody should be surprised, but I just want to know how I'm going to answer people.
How do we change that where we don't have to raise taxes? What are the options?
Typically, we've raised the police levy, that's what we've been, the police pension levy, we've been raising that to cover the pension. We've been leaving the general fund levy flat, and we've been, using other sources for the general fund. That's when we removed the utility taxes years ago, but we added the sales tax on the home rule sales tax, so that's been doing good for us. I know we've been adding some businesses, but the amount of new businesses with the sales tax rebates and things like that will not cover that. When we did close the TIF, we added back to the general fund expenses that we were partially charging to the TIF for TIF activities. So that's why we do need to increase the levy to cover those TIF costs that come back to the general fund after the TIF fund is closed.
You know, I've sat on this board for 9.5 years, and I think for the majority of the time we've kept our levy flat, I want to say. Very incremental increases.
Right, for the general levy, we've kept.
The general levy.
Yeah, I can.
And I think when we have raised it, we've always done the exercise of having staff look at things that could be cut. And I don't think any of us like the things that staff recommended being cut, but I think it's one of those things where we're proposing to raise taxes on people, and I think we do need to just take a quick look at some of the things we could cut to not have that impact. Whether we implement them or not, you know, that's another story, but I think it's something we owe our residents to
Due diligence.
look at.
I understand that part, but when we do our budget in the spring, and we talk about the levy, that's the time to cut things, not after. So we talked about at the beginning, we passed the budget along with, this is where it's going to be funded from. So this levy goes to fund the budget that was passed back in April. That's the fiscal year that started May 1. So if we want to say we want to cut, we need to do that when we approve budget.
It's kind of a catch-22, though, Todd. You know that, because we don't know what that number is going to be.
Yeah,
we certainly don't know what the pension number is going to be. That's the biggest burden that we have. Is the police pension. We don't know that it's going to be 20-some% higher.
Right, and the pension number is really kind of the magic number here.
And sometimes you have to bite the bullet.
You know, and we already anticipated taking money from the general fund reserve to dampen the impact of the police pension fund.
Not an exact science.
Yeah, there is still talks about changing or pushing off the funding date. I know that right now the pensions need to be funded 90% 2040, and they're talking about that. Now, that's not going to help pay the pension liability, but that would reduce the annual required contribution.
Where are we at? Are we like 78?
Yeah, we're at about 78% funded as far as if you're looking at the market rate and the present value of the liabilities. There's different ways.
That's a moving target, though, too, because every time you have multiple retirees, that number changes. That number gets, the burden is higher and higher as you get more retirees and more hires.
Right.
And 6 more people, you've got to fund that particular portion.
That percentage goes up and down quite a bit with the investments.
Yeah. And 2022 is a train wreck.
It's not looking really good this year either. So we need to keep funding the pensions.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really negotiable.
And there are some unknowns this year at, the Springfield level, looking at enriching the Tier 2. You know, we looked at Tier 2 as a way to give some relief to municipalities in funding those. And the state legislators in Springfield are now looking at rolling some of that back in Tier 2, and, you know, maybe the counterbalance to that is like, we're going to enhance Tier 2, but we're going to extend that 10-year period. It's not really a wash for municipalities, but in Springfield, they have different math than we do up here. And, you know, we don't want to get in a hole in our pension liabilities. Like, you know.
What are other communities doing? What are other communities doing? I'm assuming they have like some same problems, like does the municipal
They raise
council?
taxes. Other towns raise taxes.
But like, are they raising it this year? Did they do it last year? Like, where do we like kind of fall in with?
I think every town kind of has their own tolerance level for tax increases or how they're doing things. There's a few towns that have added different taxes. Some towns have increased their sales tax, or they've, you know, a home rule municipality has a different set of menu that they can look at for tax incentives than a non-home rule community. So, you know, a town that is home rule can have more flexibility in changing those percentages than a town that is not home rule. So they have different restrictions. Some are under, you know, different kinds of structure. Some towns don't have property taxes. Some towns rely heavily on their sales taxes. So every town has a different mix. So I think it's more individualized. It's not, well, you know, next door they raised it X.
We have a special meeting once before something was going to expire to take advantage of an opportunity to be able to tax.
That was the penny push tax, and that's in litigation, I believe. So we don't want to start collecting something we might have to pay back.
So if we go to the first page after the executive summary, so the increase, let's just say the pension fund is the police pension 456,158. And the general corporate is 682. That's for the whole village, right? That's for the whole village?
Yes, that's right.
Sorry, it's not split between Cook or DuPage here.
That's the full levy, right.
So do we have money in the general fund this year to offset the pension like we did last year? We've already did that, which is bringing this to 456. That's what that is.
Yeah, we're including to use the 319,000 again this year as we used last year. So again, the problem is that keeps compounding then going forward. So the levy, the required contribution increased would have been 800 and some thousand. We're proposing to increase the levy 500,000 instead of the full 800,000. But then next, it'll keep drawing either from the general fund, or we'll need to increase the levy for that amount plus the new amount coming forward.
Where's the general fund balance at sitting now according to policy?
General fund it's over the policy of about 35,000.
By how much?
It's at about 50% of revenue over the 35% that we're talking about. I think that one thing the policy is not covering as far as capital costs, and we'll be talking about that in the next month or two, are the stormwater, sewer, improvements that need to be made. We talk about there's no revenue source for those. That's gonna have to come out of the general fund. So money in the general fund is gonna be needed for capital costs.
You already accounted for that, except for the 316,000. We think we can get by using the 316.
What did you say it was over? The general fund?
Our policy states that we would have between 25 and 35% of our annual operating expenses. We have our annual operating expenses in the general fund are about 30 million right now. That's what our current budget was. So 50%, 15 million or so, we might be closer to 55% as far as, so we're 5 to, 6 million over, but we have those kind of expenses in stormwater improvements that need to be made, in the next 5 years. So that's why we're kind of earmarking that money for that. We've talked about infrastructure needs in the past, and we've gone over what's needed for streets, storm sewers. I know that our MFT contribution, we're looking at $1,600,000 a year for MFT contributions, and how that is not going to cover. We've been working on the Rebuild Illinois funds. That helped us, but we're going to need to supplement those general fund funds. So
if our percentage of change is 9.26, what would we need to look at to get that to 5?
So what you need to account for is the $750,000 increase. That's not going to increase the property taxes because of the extra EAV from the closing of the TIF coming onto the tax rolls. So the total increase outside of the 750, the additional EAV, is 4.35%. The portion of the increased total levy from the pension fund. So we're looking at a total of 4.35% increase to the levy that's not going to be offset. That's the $40 or so on a house that has been paying $1,000 a year towards the village.
I'm sorry, if you go back to that slide, the first slide again, that shows the very first slide.
Well, I'm on the second slide, and the reason why I'm on the second slide is because the first slide includes the loss factor. It includes the extension. When you're showing the 9% increase.
The actual's 10.8.
So I'm on this slide that shows the actual proposed levy to the actual 22 approved levy. That's
10.8% total.
Yeah.
You mentioned that our police pension fund was 78% funded for the state policy.
State policy wants it at 100% by
2040?
Well, the state, 90% by 2040. So that.
We're at 78 right now.
Yeah, that's about, yeah.
Could you email us and let us know how we rank amongst all the communities in Illinois?
Way up there.
Are we in the top 10, top 5, top 50? I just would like to know where we
I
rate.
think the city of Chicago is somewhere in the 20s, right? I think it's somewhere in the 20s.
That's not where you want to be, but yeah, they're in the
No,
20s.
it's not where you want to be, but, I think we can always go back to the well and collect taxes or levy taxes, and obviously it's a very important fund to make sure it's funded. But if we're in the top 5, what are we trying to do here, So
20 years to go.
Well, here's the thing about pension funding. The more money you in there, the more money you have in the fund, the more investment returns there are. So then, right now, we're paying the annual cost plus the catch-up. If you the closer you are to being funded, the closer you are to only pay the annual cost without having to pay the annual catch-up. Some communities are contributing more, or they're issuing pension bonds to put more money into the fund because that's going to help them in the long run. I know that, you know, we're looking at taxes this year, but the more money you have in there funding it, that's more interest returns that you get, and then you're only contributing your annual costs.
Are you,
Go ahead, trustee Gunstein.
I just had a question. So you're indicating that we're sitting at about $5 million over in reserves, and there's a sewer project that's going to eat a portion of that up, and that sewer project is not part of the budget?
Stormwater.
Stormwater, I'm sorry,
We have
stormwater.
a funding source.
Stormwater, yeah,
Storm does.
yeah, our wastewater and our water funds, we use rates for that. The water rates, sewer rates, revenue, that pays for our capital improvements. But
But
when
don't we account for that in our budget?
we do have it in our 5-year capital plan,
So, I mean, I just don't like seeing the people's money being held for over what the limit is. So, you know, for me, if we brought that down a little bit, would it really hurt future projects?
It'll
if
get
budgeted?
replenished, it'll just get
If it's being replenished.
as people.
I mean, I understand having a safety net, but I think it's a lot. It's a lot of the residents' money being held, and I just think that there's something that we should look
Not
at.
being held, it's being earmarked to
Or
fund
earmarked.
the sewer, the storm sewer projects.
But
So it's,
aren't those funds coming back through in the continual budget every year for water and sewer repairs?
water and sewer rates are separate than stormwater sewer. So there's no line on your water bill that goes to stormwater sewer or stormwater funding for capital projects.
But the money that goes into the general fund is constantly being replenished.
Comes into the general, is paid out of the general fund.
And that fund is being replenished through taxes, sales tax, right? Different taxes.
Everything.
Yes?
okay, the last couple of years, we had a lot of pandemic funding. So the last couple of years were good years. We had strong economy, a lot of sales tax. That's not guaranteed as far as, you're not going to see the type of pandemic funding that we had as far as $1.5 million from the CARES Act, and then additional money from the ARPA money. We did, our financials look good from going through with the pandemic funding, but that's because we don't run a hospital, we didn't, you know, have those kind of costs involved with that. But that's not guaranteed going forward. I'd say that we're not going to have those kind of funds going forward. So it won't, the fund balance is not going to keep replenishing itself.
Review it. There's plenty more time for questions. Has to be done by December 5th. Right?
Yes.
Well, actually, we have to, we don't have that much time. We need to post an estimated levy
Yeah?
and have a public hearing at the next meeting, and we can, if we want, we could still discuss it at the next meeting.
Yeah, we will.
That's what we want to do.
Yep.
Would you want us to propose the same level of increase as last year, the $15, like you were saying, trustee LaPorte?
Yeah, give us a breakdown of what it does to the other funds if we're going to dip into anything else. Absolutely. That'd be helpful.
The other
Live
funds.
on the edge a little bit, Todd.
No. Then moving into the capital budget review, we're just going to slash and burn through it and just, like, take things out so that, to your point, Trustee Hopkins, we're not putting that in the budget at
I didn't say
the
that.
next time.
I mean, I said we should look at everything. I didn't say cut. I'm not up here slashing things. I would like to have a discussion.
Maybe that was an aggressive term.
Yeah,
On the flip side, how for the revenues? What else can?
You talking to me?
Does anybody else have any other comments?
No. He's just gonna have to pay more for golf.
Thank you, Chairman Laporte. Public Works and Golf Committee, Chairman DEYNE.
Thank you, Mr. President. We only have one thing on the, agenda this evening is DuPage Water Commission, water purchase and sales contract extension. And, I'd like Dan to, take the lead on this, if you would.
All right, thank you. I'll try to go through this real quick. The DuPage Water Commission customer contract expires in February of next year. So as part of that, the customers put together a steering committee of 8 members. Bartlett was included in that since we were the newest customer, so I sat in on those meetings where we went through the contract, reviewed it with DWC. Once we got it to a point where we were in agreement, DuPage County had their state's attorney review it, and Naperville had their internal legal staff review it as well, with the DuPage Water Commission's attorneys, and we've got it to a point where it's being recommended to approve the agreement. So we're in a process right now where the customers are all going through their boards to get it approved. DuPage Water Commission presented last week, actually, and they're going to be bringing it to, once the members approve it, then they will award it, and that all has to get done before February. So the plan is, over the next couple months, everyone's going to be bringing this to their boards, so that we can then give it to DuPage Water Commission saying that they've been approved, and then they can approve it from there. There really aren't any changes. The contract was working very well. I would say the majority of the changes are cleanup because the original contract included all the projects associated with establishing the DuPage Water Commission. We had and then there were subsequent customers that joined, Bartlett being one of them. So a lot of language was just cleanup of that, because now we're in the basically contract where we're purchasing water from DuPage Water Commission. It'll be a 40-year contract, and if there's any questions, I can answer those.
Has DuPage Water Commission finalized their negotiations with City of Chicago?
That's actually under negotiations right now. So that contract expires in March of next year. And so this month, the DuPage Water Commission will be discussing at their board a contract extension with Chicago. They are looking at alternatives, even an alternative source to get away from Chicago. So those things are being talked about. They've got a couple meetings this month where they're going to be presenting the alternatives options to the board, and the customers will be sitting in on those meetings. What they've told us so far is, no matter what, if the DuPage Water Commission were to decide to say, thank you, Chicago, we're going to go another route, that's going to take 15 plus years to design, build, and permit.
Another straw in the lake.
That's exactly what they're talking about. So they will be extending the contract with Chicago. It's just a matter of how long is the discussion at this point.
Could we keep informed on the dates of these meetings that DWC has?
Definitely.
Definitely let our residents know also and post it, because I think it's important, because it could raise our rates. If they went with a different water source, our rates could go up.
They're public meetings, so I think people can attend. I'll definitely make sure to get you the meeting dates. I believe there's one on the it's like middle of October, like 16th, 17th, and then one at the end of the month, so.
So you kind of hit on it a little bit. My question was gonna be, can you have an example of what an alternative would be? Would that be going into Indiana and accessing Michigan from there?
They looked at, I think, 3 routes right now. One was through Chicago, one was south of Chicago, and one was north. I will say that the north seems to be the most preferred because there's other JAWAs, Joint Action Water Agencies, that may be able to join on with that, which would help spread that cost. But it would be putting, like the mayor said, putting a straw out into the lake. You would have to build a treatment facility and then pump it to all the members that are involved. So it's definitely a huge project.
Anyone else? Dan, thank you very much. That's all we have this evening.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second.
By trustee Daney, seconded by trustee Hopkins. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Daney?
Yes.
Gansey?
Yes.
Gunstein? Yes. Hopkins?
Yes.
Laporte?
Yes.
Swansky?
We are adjourned.